Hi, Paul Seabridge here. I'm a UK-based business investor and owner of private equity mergers and acquisitions firm Kleinsman Global. Now, I'm actually sector agnostic in what I do. Fundamentally, I buy, sell, invest in, and merge small and medium enterprises both here in the UK as well as in the US and Western Europe. I also run a 3-day experiential training event for business owners where you can come and learn how to grow your business significantly, stably, and quickly. So you won't just hear from me and my experience of building a global recruitment business, but you'll hear from other entrepreneurs that have been there, done it, worn the t-shirt, sometimes more than once, and they'll be sharing their skills and expertise of how to grow a business. So I was asked to record some brief thoughts on what I call the secret ingredients. So I bang on in my program, as well as in various speaking events that I do, about the difference between a business that is really plateaued and struggling to grow and those businesses that are really propelling themselves forward. And I've been involved in probably getting on for 100 different businesses now, and aside from growing my own interests in the recruitment and IT and marketing world, I've been privileged to work with many entrepreneurs, and I think when you look at some of these businesses and how they're growing, it's because they've got what I call these secret ingredients. So, what are they? Well, I guess if I take back to the time when I was running my building my global recruitment business, it was pretty tough, and I made a lot of mistakes along the way. So I guess, firstly, I probably learned the hard way. I wouldn't change my time in running that recruitment business for a more easier ride, because without those mistakes, I wouldn't have the expertise that I've got now. And in the UK, 94% of businesses fail within the first 5 years, which is just a staggering statistic. And most of the time, it's not necessarily because they're not profitable, but it's because they run out of cash. Now, for every 10,000 startups in the UK, only 100 will actually make it to £1 million revenue, and only 1 in 10,000 will make it to 10 million revenue. So it's really tough out there for small and medium enterprises. But if you look at those businesses that reach 1 million, 5 million, 10 million, it's because they have what I call the golden ingredients in their business. So what are those golden ingredients? Well, the first thing that I see in successful growing businesses versus those that are struggling to grow is that the business owner has really made themselves redundant. And by that I mean that in a small and medium enterprise, business owners feel that they need to work maybe 50, 60, 70, 80-hour weeks, and they tend to be really consumed in the day-to-day operations of it. So you're basically dealing with customers and staff. Now, the challenge with that is that you're working in your business rather than on it. You're just getting through each day, dealing with all the things that are thrown at you that need to be dealt with. Now, in those successful businesses that are really scaling and growing, the difference is because the business owner has removed themselves from that day-to-day operations, so dealing with customers and staff, they're working on their business. So they're focusing very heavily on the strategy of the business and where it's heading, and how they're going to get there, and ultimately the driver of that business plan. So the first tip really is to make sure that you make yourself redundant from that business. So to do that, you need to make sure you've got really smart people with the right skills and experience within your business that can make sure that it runs effectively, whether you show up or not. If you look at, say, Sir Richard Branson, for example, do you think his Virgin Group of companies don't run effectively if he doesn't show up to the office? Of course they run effectively, because he's a master at recruitment. So the first thing really is to make sure that you build that team of amazing people. I would almost go as far as saying that you want to hire people that are absolutely smarter than you, and it's fine to be the dumbest person in the room, because if you've got amazing people that have been there, done it before, worn the t-shirt, then you're halfway there to really creating an effective business that of course can grow. What's the next golden ingredient? Well, you've got the right people. You now need to have absolutely amazing product or service. So when I say amazing product or service, if you look at most businesses in the UK and globally really, pretty much 99% of the time, they will be doing the same thing as their competition. So it's very rare to see a real successful business where something brand new that's never been seen before has been invented as a new product or a new service. So generally, what you need to do, first of all, is make sure that you've got a great product or service and that you have something that's unique about your product or service that your competition doesn't have. So in effect, that could be that you offer a better service, a cheaper product than your competition. There are a whole host of things that you can do to differentiate yourself, but you want to make sure that your product or service is basically better than your competition's. You then need to have absolutely amazing marketing that brings people, potential customers, to you. Now, this video is not long enough for me to talk about all the amazing free marketing ideas that you could put into your business. But fundamentally, if you attend my experiential training program, you will learn what some of those effective marketing strategies are that can fundamentally grow your business. So we talk very much on the program about how you can get people to come and buy your product or service for free. So how you can basically get your business completely oversubscribed, so you've got more customers coming through that funnel, if you like, that want to buy your product or service. The next golden ingredient is to make sure that you've got absolutely amazing processes. So in this short video, we're going to talk very briefly about the sales processes and marketing processes. But if you manufacture a product, you want to make sure that your processes around how you manufacture are really effective, because once you've got effective processes, you can really scale a business. If you can show your people, your factory, your teams in various different departments how to effectively deliver whatever they're expected to deliver, then you can scale that up, because in effect you've got a roadmap and a plan of, if we want to achieve this, these are the steps that we need to go through to do that. So if you're making a product, you will have a number of steps in that manufacturing process. So it doesn't matter whether you're making one product or you're making 10,000 products. If you follow that same process, you will effectively manufacture whatever it is that you're making. Exactly the same applies in service industry, in that if you can deliver your service in an effective way, you've got all the steps in that process, again, you can deliver that service to one customer or 10,000 customers, as long as that plan is followed. So just to take that into context, if we look at, say, sales, for example. So I bang on in my experiential training program about the 5 C's. Now, the 5 C's are crowd. So this is the crowd of people that come into contact with your business and that potentially are your customers. So that could be through your website, through the phone, visiting your store, however you sell your products. That crowd of people that come into contact with you is 1 C. The next C is the conversion. So how many of that crowd do you then convert into actual sales? The next C is the cost. So what do you charge for your product or service? And then the next C after that is continuity. So how many times a customer will buy a product or service from you? When you multiply all of those C's together, so crowd multiplied by conversion, multiplied by cost, multiplied by continuity, you get the cash result. And as I mentioned earlier in this video, 94% of businesses fail in the UK in the first 5 years, and most of the time it's because they run out of cash rather than them not being profitable. So you can apply this methodology to any business and you can improve that cash result by improving those C's. So if you are able to influence those 4 first C's by around about 5% each, then in most businesses that will give you an additional cash result of anywhere between 20 and 40%. So what most people do when they're looking at growing their business is they focus pretty much most of their attentions on that first C, the crowd. And if anything, that's probably the hardest one to influence, because it's also the one that probably costs the most amount of money to influence. So to increase the crowd, you need to get more prospects, more leads. And how can you do that? Well, you could take out advertisements in newspapers or press, or Google or Facebook ads, or however it is you market yourself. You could spend more money on those channels to generate more of that crowd. But as I say, that's probably the hardest one to influence. So it's not to say don't do that and don't focus on that. If you've got a budget and you can spend more of it to generate more of a result, then why not? but there are also some free and easier ways to generate greater prospects coming through your website or through your business. And if you come on my experiential training program, we'll cover off what some of those are. But looking at those other C's, the ones that are perhaps easier to influence. So firstly, take the conversion. So if you can improve your conversion rate, so you just basically get more out of what is already coming through your door, then you're going to do more business. So it's looking at your sales processes. Is your website, if you sell just directly to consumers through a website, is your website as easy to use and buy from like Amazon? You can go onto Amazon and buy whatever you want to buy, and probably within 2 or 3 clicks you could be at the checkout, and it's dead easy to buy from Amazon. If you're selling through a website, you want to make sure that your website is dead easy to use, doesn't put people off, and it's dead easy to buy from. If you're selling a product or service over the phone or face to face, and it's really looking at how your salespeople are interacting with those customers, and how they're selling. So looking at that whole sales process, that if they had better training on closing, on selling the benefits, of listening, fact finding, listening to those pain points, etc., then they might be in a better position to be able to close more sales. Cost. So if you can put your prices up, and this is probably something that a lot of people will say to me, well, we're in a really competitive marketplace, there's no way we can put our prices up. I guess it's all about getting across that value argument. There are people out there that buy Ford Fiestas, and there are people out there that buy Bentleys, and there's nothing wrong with either, but clearly some people have got a budget to go and spend on Bentleys, and some people haven't got that budget and they'll go and buy a Ford Fiesta. But at Bentley, you could go and buy a BMW M6 for the same sort of price. How does BMW get people to buy their product versus how does Bentley get people to buy their product? They're in the same sort of price point. So it's really quite difficult sometimes to compete when you're selling a product or service that's around about the same sort of price as others, unless you can compel people with that value argument. So I guess what I would say is look at the sort of periphery things. So if you go and buy a Ford Fiesta, doesn't matter which garage you buy it from, if it's a brand new one, it's probably going to cost you about the same, regardless of which dealership you go and buy that vehicle from. So I'm not saying you can't buy it maybe a few £100 cheaper, but in the main, it's pretty much the same price. So it's looking at those maybe higher ticket services that you don't sell many of. So for example, if you're selling a car, you might sell a service plan. You might sell that service plan at the moment for £99. So if you come and buy a car from me, if you pay £99, you'll get your first 2 years servicing free, for example. Now you could put the price up to 125 or 130 quid, so that's a 25 to 30% increase. And if you do that on some of those products or services that you don't sell many of, that you could put the price up without really customers noticing, then again you can influence that cash result. The continuity again comes back to the processes really that you have. So how do you communicate and engage with customers? I think one of the websites that does this really well is Vistaprint. So you can buy business cards and printed material, marketing materials, etc. from Vistaprint. Now, if you go and buy some business cards, for example, from them, when you've checked out, they'll give you a one-time offer that's only available at that point. So do you want to buy another 1,000 business cards for a couple of quid? Do you want to buy compliment slips with the same logo, etc., for just a couple of extra pounds? They're basically persuading customers, and they're using urgency, I guess, that you've just bought from me. Here's a special offer that's only available right now and isn't going to be available ever again. So it's really thinking about how you can engage with customers and how you can communicate with them. So sending out autoresponder marketing, for example. Engaging with customers, giving them free information or tips to get them to come back to your website or to interact with your business. So looking at how you can improve that engagement, which will ultimately result in that continuity. So basically, if you can get your customers, slightly more customers, converting more of them because you've got better sales processes, charging a little bit more for what you do, and getting your customers to come and spend money with you more than once, or more than they do at the moment, will result in a massive improvement in the amount of cash that your business sits on. The next golden ingredient is in businesses that are really growing successfully, is having the right legal and tax structure in place and the right financial controls. Let's just look at financial controls. I mean, fundamentally, what you want to make sure in a growing business is that you've got more money coming in than you've got going out. And that might seem like a really simple concept, but it's amazing how many businesses drive their business through their P&L, making more money, but perhaps struggle with cash flow. And I'll give you an example. I was working with a very successful training business up until a point when it won some business with a Middle Eastern government. And basically what they did is they provided really high-tech training to various governments around the world. And what so they were turning over about 4 million quid. This contract was worth 1 million to them. It was going to cost them about 600,000 to deliver this piece of training because it was run over 6 months, and they'd have to fly their training staff out to the Middle East and put them up in hotels. And obviously there was, the whole delivery piece was going to cost about 600 grand. So this £1 million contract, less the 600k in costs, was going to make them a profit of about 400k. But the MD that had won this particular piece of work had basically negotiated really silly payment terms. So basically he wasn't going to get paid until after he delivered the training. So he would go out there, deliver the training, he would incur around about £600,000 worth of costs before he got his invoice paid. So that put significant pressure on cash flow because he had to find 600k up front to go and deliver this piece of work, and he wasn't going to get paid until after he'd done that. So that, whilst it was a very profitable contract, is a prime example of how cash flow can affect a business significantly if it's not managed in the right way. So it would have been more effective to have negotiated payment terms up front, or certainly a proportion of those fees payable up front. But obviously in this particular example, that wasn't done. So making sure you've got rigorous credit control in place, making sure you're credit checking, for example, your customers, if for example you're selling to a business, making sure that, I say that no customer is worth having unless they actually are going to pay you and pay you on time within the terms agreed. And it's amazing how many businesses I come across where business owners and teams will be chasing the revenue without thinking necessarily about either the profit or the cash flow result at the end. So having really good processes in place around who you're going to do business with, managing the control of cash coming into your business, making sure you're managing your costs. One of the things that I do when I get involved in a brand new business is I'll look at the P&L. And I'll go through it with a fine-tooth comb, and I'll look at every single thing that we spend money on, and I will ask myself the question, do we need to buy this? And if the answer to that question is no, then we cut it out. If the answer is yes, then I ask myself, and can we get this cheaper elsewhere? So of course there's always an argument for value, so cheapest isn't always best, but if you're buying envelopes or paper, for example, well, if you can get that a little bit cheaper somewhere else, well, it is what it is. Whereas there might be fundamental supplies to your business where it pays to actually buy it in for a higher cost than maybe a competitor can provide it, and because it's a better value for your business. But if you go through your P&L and analyze it and look at whether you can buy stuff cheaper elsewhere or whether you actually need it, will or should release cash in any business. One of the businesses I was involved in the early days it was basically a real estate business and traded from a number of different branches, and in each one of their branches they had water coolers and coffee machines, so staff were able to drink really nice coffee, and they were able to provide nice cold water to staff and customers if they visited the shops. Now, when we actually decided to cut all of that out of the business, it saved us about 30 grand a year. So it was a very nice to have thing, but it wasn't needed to effectively run the business. Next golden ingredient is what I call balance sheet thinking. So most accountants and business owners that are switched on tend to run their businesses through their P&L. So, they're looking at how much revenue they get coming in, how much money they're spending to run their business and to supply their products or service. And then hopefully if everything's going well, then there should be a profit at the end of it, that you're bringing more money into the business than it costs you to run, which gives you a profit. Now, whilst that's a great way to run a business and making sure that you're making money every week or every month or every year, if you start looking at your business through its balance sheet as well as its profit and loss account, this is what I call balance sheet thinking. So what you're looking for is assets within your business that can make you money. So to give you a real simple analogy, is that if you were going to buy a property, you could rent that property out. So you might go and buy a property for 100 grand, and you could stick a tenant in there for 5 years that pays you £500 a month rent. So you're getting 6 grand a year or a 6% return, and over 5 years, you've got 30 grand's worth of rent coming in. And if the market's rising, then that property might be worth, 125, 130 grand. So that asset has made you, you've invested capital, and you've received rental income, which has given you about a 6% return. And you've also got the appreciation of that asset because the house price has gone up over the period of time that you've owned it. So that's an example of how you can use an asset to generate a revenue. Now, if you're manufacturing a product, then think about all the intellectual property that you've got within your business. So how you make your product, if there's patents in there, brand names, logos, processes, etc., all of those things could potentially be capitalized and turned into an asset on your balance sheet, which you can then use. So to give you a real simple example of this, I was involved in a concrete manufacturing business. So basically they made concrete breeze blocks. They had a unique product in that the way that the shape of their breeze blocks was quite unique. And it basically made a lot of sense for construction companies in the UK to buy these breeze blocks because they were significantly cheaper than rival products. It was a patented product, but it was a relatively small business. It employed about 20 staff, and it really only did business in the UK and Ireland. So what we did was we capitalised the intellectual property within the business. So it had its patent, its brand name, its processes in terms of how it made these funny shaped breeze blocks. We capitalised all of those things on the balance sheet, and then we basically licensed that out to a major construction company in Dubai. Now, Dubai is pretty much the construction capital. We weren't doing any business there, and we basically licensed out the patent. So it basically gave this construction company the permission and the technology and the processes to be able to manufacture these blocks themselves at cost price for them to use in their construction projects. And that was worth about £500,000 in license fees to this particular business that was turning over about 2 million. So about 25% of its revenue then came from just licensing out its assets. So have a good look in your business at the intellectual property rights within it and whether there's anything that you can capitalize to give yourself some assets that you can then almost sweat for income, revenue, and capital growth within your business. And then the final ingredient that I'm going to discuss on this video is once you've got really great people, you're not having to run it anymore because you've got great people that do it for you. You've got really great processes in place so that when you get potential customers coming into contact with your business, you're able to convert more of those people into actual sales. You've got really good, strong sales processes. If you're manufacturing products, then you've got really strong processes that can be really scaled up if you start selling more products or services. You've got great financial control. You're starting to think about your business through its balance sheet as well as its profit and loss account. You've got the right legal structure in place, which I know we've not covered on this particular video, but if you come on my experiential training program, we talk about the right legal and tax structure that can release around about 15 to 20% in additional cash flow in a business, but it basically protects your assets and can really be used as a platform to grow your business. But once you've got all of those things in place, and you're, if you like, extracting as much value as you possibly can out of what you've already got, it then gets a little bit harder to continue that growth. You know, if you're bringing customers through your front door and you're converting as many of those as possible, you're charging them as much as you can charge them, etc., then there becomes a point when you just, unless you start spending lots of more money on marketing, it's gonna dry up. So there is potentially an easier way to go out there and grow a business, and I would say that that way is to go out there and buy a business. You see, when you're starting a business, so let's say you run a retail business and you operate from a number of stores, one of the ways that you could grow your business would be to go and spend some money on opening a store in a new location and fitting it out, hiring the staff, selling whatever products it is you sell through that retail store. And that obviously, is one way to do it. Or you could go out and buy a store in a new location. And the difference between the two is that in a startup business, or a new location, you've got to go and find staff, you've got to go and find premises. People don't necessarily know your brand, so you've got to create that brand awareness. You've got to market yourself to get customers to come to your store. And you've got to do all of that from almost a blank piece of paper and starting from scratch. Where in an existing business, even if it's one that's not performing, you've already got a brand, you've already got the people, you've already got the premises, you've already got the know-how, you've already got customers, you've already got cash flow. So you've got all those ingredients, if you like, to start with. And if it's a business that's not performing, well, it's sometimes easier, I think, to go into a failing business, fix the problems, than it is to actually start one from scratch. So you can go out there and buy a business, or and you might say, well, we don't really have the money or the cash flow to be able to do that. If you come on my experiential training program, we'll teach you how you can release around about 20% of your revenues in additional cash flow in the first 12 months, that you could then use to go and make acquisitions. But there are also smarter ways to be able to go and buy a business. You know, if you buy a distressed business, you can probably pick it up for next to nothing. Or you could use what's called a leverage buyout structure to buy a business. So basically use the assets of a business to buy it. So in real simple terms, if a business owns its premises that it trades from, if it's got cash in the bank, if it owns machinery, fixed assets, you can raise finance against all of those, and you can use the cash raised from that financing to actually buy the business. So it's a complex structure, but it basically enables you to buy really good, profitable businesses that are consistent, and you can basically use other people's money to buy them. And again, on my experiential training program, we cover that deal structure in quite a lot of detail. And I've worked with many business owners where we've used that to go out there and effectively grow their business 3-4 times in a couple of years, and without them using any of their own money. So acquisition is perhaps a smarter way to grow a business once you've extracted all of the value out of what you've already got and you've got a really effective platform to grow from. So I hope you found this video useful. If you'd like to find out more information, you can visit my website at paulseabridge.com. If you'd like to find out more about the experiential training program that I run, it's called the Business Growth Summit. Again, if you visit my website, paulseabridge.com, and click on the Business Growth Summit, I run this experiential training program. It's run over 3-4 days at one of my holiday homes in Europe. It's usually Portugal, and you basically come out to the event and you'll learn from not just me and my experience of building a global recruitment business, but you'll also hear from other successful entrepreneurs that have significantly grown a business in a very short period of time, and they'll be sharing their skills and experience with you. So visit the website if you'd like more information. Also on my website, you can enter your email address and we will send you regular updates and, if you like, free information and free tips of how you can grow a business significantly, stably, and really quickly.